Every human alive today exists because of one thing. At some point, two ancient humans chose each other. But how did that actually work? In a world with no rules, no rituals, no language yet, how did the very first humans navigate something as complex as intimacy? The answer reaches back 300,000 years, and it will completely change how you see human sexuality. First, an important clarification. Virginity, as we understand it today, did not exist in ancient times. The concept of virginity, as a social status, a moral category, something to be lost or protected, is a cultural invention. A relatively recent one, and a deeply complicated one. Ancient humans did not lose their virginity. They simply had sex for the first time. And that is a very different thing. So the real question is, what did first sexual experiences look like for ancient humans? And the answer requires us to understand how ancient human society actually worked. Let us go back. 300,000 years ago. East Africa. Small groups of early Homo sapiens. Groups of 20 to 50 people. Moving constantly. Everyone knowing everyone. No privacy. No separate bedrooms. No closed doors. Every aspect of life was shared and visible, including intimacy, which means the first sexual experience was almost certainly not a private event. It happened within the community, known to the community, often involving the community in some way. Now, what did ancient human sexual behavior actually look like? What does the science say? To understand early human sexuality, we start with our closest relatives, primates. Not because humans are just animals, but because primate behavior gives us our evolutionary starting point. Our two closest relatives, chimpanzees and bonobos, have completely opposite sexual social structures. Chimpanzees, highly competitive. Males compete aggressively for mating access. The strongest male gets the most mating opportunities. Violence is common. Bonobos the opposite. Cooperative. Egalitarian. Sex used as social bonding. Bonobos use sexual contact to resolve conflicts. Reduce tension. Build alliances. We share roughly 98% of our DNA with both species. We sit between them evolutionarily, which suggests early human sexuality probably incorporated elements of both models. Some competition, some cooperation, some hierarchy, some equality. Not a simple story, a complicated one, because humans are complicated animals. Now, when did ancient humans typically have their first sexual experience? The biological answer starts with puberty, which has not changed much. Ancient human females likely reached puberty between ages 12 and 14, males slightly later. But here is the critical difference. Ancient humans did not necessarily wait. There was no cultural script saying, wait until marriage, wait until you are older, wait at all. Biological readiness and social permission were much closer together in the ancient world. If you were biologically mature, you were socially considered ready. In most ancient contexts, life expectancy in the ancient world was not what we imagine. The average was dramatically lower. Not because ancient humans aged faster, but because infant and child mortality was devastating. Those who survived to puberty often lived into their 30s and 40s, some much longer. But the pressure to reproduce early was genuine and real. Every generation mattered. Now, what happened when two ancient humans became interested in each other? Attraction, signaling, reading signals, the ancient dance of courtship. Ancient humans were extraordinary communicators, long before language was fully developed. Body language, eye contact, touch, proximity, scent. These were their tools, and they were very good at reading them. Evolution had been selecting for this skill for millions of years. Now, what did ancient human attraction actually look like? What were they looking for? Health signals were everything. A strong, healthy mate was a survival advantage. Clear skin signaled no parasites. Bright eyes signaled no disease. Strong body signaled good genes. But here is what most people do not realize. Status mattered enormously. Not wealth in the modern sense, but status within the group. Who was trusted? Who was generous? Who was skilled at hunting or gathering? Who kept their word? Who showed up when things got dangerous? These were the ancient human equivalents of attractive qualities, and they were deeply practical. A partner who was generous meant you would eat even when your own hunt failed. A partner who was brave meant you and your children had better protection. Ancient attraction was not arbitrary. It was evolutionary logic, dressed in feeling. Now, did ancient humans have pair bonds? Did they partner up the way we do? This is one of the most debated questions in evolutionary anthropology. The honest answer, probably a mix, depending on the group, the resources, the circumstances. Some groups may have had relatively stable pair bonds, others more flexible arrangements. The human body itself gives us clues, and they point in interesting directions. In species with pure male competition, like gorillas, males are dramatically larger than females. The male needs to be big to fight off other males. The bigger the dimorphism, the more competition. In humans, males are only about 15% larger than females. Modest dimorphism, suggesting moderate but not extreme male competition in our evolutionary past. More evidence. Testes size. This sounds strange, but it reveals a lot. In species where females mate with multiple males, males evolve larger testes. Because sperm competition becomes important. More sperm means better chance of fertilization. Chimpanzees, who have very promiscuous females, have enormous testes relative to body size. Gorillas, where one male monopolizes all females, have tiny testes. No sperm competition needed. Humans sit in the middle, suggesting some sperm competition in our past, but not extreme amounts. The biological evidence consistently points to the same conclusion. Ancient humans were neither purely monogamous nor purely promiscuous. They were flexible, adaptable. Their mating behavior shifted with circumstances, just as their behavior in all other areas of life was flexible and adaptable. Now, what about the experience itself? How did first intimate encounters unfold? Ancient humans lived in close physical contact. Touching was normal, constant, grooming each other, sleeping pressed together for warmth. Physical closeness was simply life, which means the boundary between non-sexual and sexual touch was navigated differently. Not with written rules or formal consent frameworks, with social reading, attention to signals. Ancient humans were extraordinarily sensitive to social signals. Their survival depended on it. Misreading someone's signals in a small group of 50 people had immediate and serious consequences. You could not escape to another city. You could not delete them from your life. They were your life. Now, did ancient humans have anything like the concept of virginity? Almost certainly not, in the modern sense. But transitions mattered. Coming of age mattered. Moving from childhood to adulthood was a significant social transition, recognized by the group. But the significance was about becoming a full member of the community, not about sexual purity. Ancient humans did not have the concept of sexual purity. They had the concept of social readiness. Are you strong enough? Skilled enough? Socially capable enough to contribute to the group? Those were the questions that mattered, not what you had or had not done sexually. Now, when did the concept of virginity actually appear? And why? The concept of virginity as a moral category appears to emerge with the rise of agriculture and property. When humans settled down, they accumulated things: land, animals, wealth, and they wanted to pass those things to their children, their biological children, which meant knowing with certainty who the father of a child was became important, which meant controlling female sexuality became economically valuable, and virginity became a commodity, a way of guaranteeing paternal certainty. This is where the concept of virginity comes from, not from nature, from property law. Ancient hunter-gatherer humans had no property to inherit, so they had no reason to invent it. Now, let us look at what the anthropological record shows about first sexual experiences. Anthropologists have studied dozens of traditional societies still living close to hunter-gatherer patterns. The patterns they find are remarkably consistent across very different cultures. In most traditional hunter-gatherer societies, adolescent sexual exploration was not strongly condemned. It was simply part of growing up, managed by social norms, not moral shame. The Hadza of Tanzania, one of the oldest continuously living hunter-gatherer groups on Earth. Their sexual customs have been studied extensively, and they reveal a very different world. Adolescent relationships are relatively free. Pair bonds form, but are not rigidly enforced. Serial monogamy, one partner at a time but partners change over a lifetime, is common. The Jew/Hoansi of the Kalahari, another extensively studied traditional hunter-gatherer group. First marriages among the Jew/Hoansi are typically arranged between families, but not enforced. If a young person refuses, it is typically accepted. Individual preference has weight. Premarital relationships are acknowledged and not strongly punished in most traditional hunter-gatherer groups. What is punished, universally, is violation of another person's established partnership. Adultery, in most traditional societies, is treated as a serious social violation, not because of moral purity, because it disrupts the social fabric, creates dangerous conflict. In a small group of 50 people, unresolved sexual conflict could literally destroy the group. So the rules that existed were not about purity. They were about stability, about survival. Now, what about the role of older members of the community? Did they guide younger people? In many traditional societies, older women specifically played a crucial role, preparing younger women for what their bodies would experience, what to expect, what was normal, This was the original sex education, delivered mouth to ear, generation to generation. Not clinical, not formal, personal, practical, wrapped in the specific knowledge of that community. Elder men played a similar role for younger men. What to know, how to treat a partner, how to behave. This knowledge transmission was not optional. It was woven into the social fabric. Now, what about choice? Did ancient humans have real choice in intimate partners? The answer is complicated and varies dramatically across different ancient populations. In many hunter-gatherer societies, individual choice was relatively high, especially for women, because hunter-gatherer women had real economic independence. They contributed most of the food. A woman who could feed herself and her children did not need to accept a partner she did not want. This is one of the most important and overlooked facts about ancient human women. Female choice was a real evolutionary force, not a modern invention. Darwin recognized this. He called it female choice, and it shaped everything about human males. The reason human males are relatively cooperative, relatively good at emotional communication, relatively willing to invest in offspring and in partners, is partly because women selected for these traits. Women were not passive participants in ancient human sexuality. They were active architects of it. Now, what about pleasure? Did ancient humans understand and seek sexual pleasure? Absolutely. This requires no speculation. The biology is ancient and unchanged. The same dopamine, the same oxytocin, the same neurological reward system. All ancient. Pleasure-seeking in sex is not a modern phenomenon. It is a driver of the behavior in all sexually reproducing species. Evolution does not leave reproduction to chance. It makes it feel good, so you do it. Ancient humans sought pleasure, and they communicated about it through the tools they had. Body language, sound, touch, proximity. These carried the full complexity of intimate communication. Now, what did the aftermath look like? What happened after the first experience? In many traditional hunter-gatherer societies, the transition to sexual maturity was marked publicly. Not the specific first sexual encounter itself, but the transition to adulthood it represented. Rites of passage, ceremonies, new roles within the community, new responsibilities. You are now a hunter. You are now a mother. You are now a full member of this group. That transition was celebrated because it meant more hands, more strength, more survival capacity. Now, let us look at what happened when ancient humans paired up. The first partnerships. There was no wedding ceremony 300,000 years ago, in the formal sense, but partnerships were socially recognized. The group knew who was with whom, and that recognition carried social weight. Protections, obligations. The earliest archaeological evidence of pair bonding comes from burial sites. Couples buried side by side, sometimes in an embrace. 30,000 years ago, possibly older. Someone chose to bury these two people together. That choice means something. It means their bond was recognized, valued, honored by the community that buried them. Now, when did formal marriage as an institution actually begin? The earliest known marriage contracts come from ancient Mesopotamia, around 2350 BCE. Written contracts, witnessed by officials, legally binding agreements. This is marriage as a legal institution, not marriage as a human bond. The human bond is far older. The legal institution is relatively recent. Ancient Egypt also had marriage contracts, but they were primarily economic agreements. About property, about what each family brought, about what happened if the marriage ended. Ancient Egyptian women could own property, initiate divorce, operate businesses independently. Their sexual rights within marriage were also more protected than in many later societies. Ancient Greece, a very different story, particularly for women. Greek women in classical Athens had almost no legal rights. They were legal property of their fathers, then husbands. Girls were typically married off at 14, to men often in their 30s. The girl had no say. Her virginity was literally a commodity exchanged at marriage. This was not ancient human nature. This was a specific cultural and legal system, a relatively recent invention. Ancient Rome was somewhat more liberal. Women had more legal standing in the late Republic and Empire. Roman women could own property, make contracts, appear in court, inherit wealth. But Roman marriage was still primarily about family alliance, property transfer, political connection. Marriage for love, as the primary reason, is a remarkably recent concept, largely modern. Most of human history, marriage served practical purposes. Love was a bonus, not the point. Now, let us go back to the very beginning and think about what first intimate experiences meant. For ancient humans, the first intimate experience was not loaded with the meanings we attach to it today. No shame, no purity to protect, no loss of something precious. It was a biological and social transition, part of becoming a full adult member of the community, accompanied by community knowledge, community support, community recognition. The isolation and shame that surrounds first sexual experiences in many modern cultures is not ancient, is not natural, is not inevitable. It was invented, in specific historical circumstances, for specific economic reasons, an understanding that is genuinely liberating. Now, what does all of this tell us about human sexuality in general? Human sexuality is extraordinarily flexible, more flexible than almost any other species. We can live in strict monogamy, or flexible arrangements, or various forms in between. No single human mating structure is universal. No single structure is natural. All are cultural. This flexibility is not a modern aberration. It is the ancient human baseline. Our ancient ancestors were not locked into one structure. They adapted to their circumstances, just as they adapted their diets, their shelters, their tools, their social structures. Adaptability is the defining human trait, in everything, including this. Now, one final question. What can we actually learn from this? What does understanding ancient human sexuality tell us about ourselves today? First, the shame attached to sexual inexperience is a cultural invention, not a human universal. It was created for economic reasons, to control inheritance, to manage property transfer. It has nothing to do with human nature, and everything to do with human economics. Second, the idea that there is one natural human relationship structure is simply wrong. Humans are flexible. Ancient humans were flexible. The diversity we see today is ancient. Third, female desire and female choice are ancient evolutionary forces, not modern inventions. They shaped the human species. They are written into our biology. They are not new. Fourth, intimacy has always been about more than reproduction. Always. Bonding, trust, pleasure, social cohesion. These were always part of human intimate life. And fifth, every human alive is the result of two ancient people who chose each other. Across 300,000 years of choosing, across every conceivable circumstance, your existence is the result of a 300,000-year unbroken chain of two people finding each other. Every single link in that chain worked. Not once was it broken. In a dangerous world, with no hospitals, no medicine, no safety nets of any kind, two ancient humans found each other, trusted each other, created you, over and over, for 300,000 years, without a single break. If this made you think about your own existence differently, that is exactly what this channel is here for.